Hey everyone, and welcome. When we talk about blood sugar issues, our minds usually jump straight to one thing, right? Sugar. But what if I told you that's not even close to the whole story? Today, we're going to dig into the hidden drivers of insulin resistance. And trust me, the answers are probably not what you're thinking. This quote right here, it just hits the nail on the head. We're constantly told it's all about what we eat, all about the sweet stuff. But the truth is, it's so much more complex than that. So let's pull back that curtain together and see what's really going on behind the scenes. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll cover the surprising cause itself. Then we'll unmask our three main culprits: active belly fat, something called the silent fire, and what I'm calling the stillness effect. And finally, we'll tie it all together and figure out how to break the cycle. All right, first up, the surprising cause. Before we can point any fingers, we need to, understand the crime scene. So let's start with the big question. What is insulin resistance, anyway? So here's the deal. Imagine insulin is the key that opens the doors to your cells. Its job is to let glucose, your body's main energy source, get inside. But with insulin resistance, it's like those door locks get all rusty and jammed. The key doesn't turn properly. Glucose can't get in, and it starts piling up in your bloodstream instead. So the real mystery we need to solve is, what's making those locks so rusty in the first place? Okay, let's get to our first major culprit: active belly fat. And I want to be super clear here. We're not just talking about the fat you can pinch on the surface. Nope, we're going deeper, talking about a much more, active and troublesome kind of fat. This stuff is called visceral fat. It's the deep fat that wraps itself around your internal organs, like your liver and intestines. And here's the crazy part. It's not just sitting there. Think of it like a rogue hormonal factory, just constantly pumping out disruptive chemical signals that can cause all sorts of problems. So how does this actually work? Well, as this visceral fat accumulates, it starts broadcasting all these confusing signals and hormones. It's kind of like trying to listen to your favorite radio station, but there's all this static in the background. That static, it's literally interfering with the clean signal that insulin is trying to send to your cells. All right, moving on to culprit number 2. And this one is sneaky. It's something you can't really see or feel, but it's working away in the background, having a huge effect. We're talking about chronic inflammation, which I like to call the silent fire. This fire alarm analogy is just perfect. You know how a fire alarm is super helpful when there's an actual fire? That's like acute inflammation, a short-term necessary response. But chronic inflammation? That's like the fire alarm getting stuck in the on position, just blaring 24/7. That constant low-level noise creates a state of stress that just grinds your body's systems down over time. Right, so let's make this crystal clear. Sprain your ankle, that swelling is acute inflammation, and it's actually helping you heal. That's the good kind. But this chronic inflammation we're talking about is the complete opposite. It's a long-term, damaging state that messes with all sorts of normal functions in your body. And yeah, that includes how well your cells can listen to insulin. And that brings us to our third and final culprit, the stillness effect. We're shifting gears a little bit here, away from these internal processes and more towards our day-to-day habits. Because a big piece of this puzzle is about what happens, or rather what doesn't happen, when we're just not moving. This is so important to understand. Your muscles are basically giant sponges for glucose. They love the stuff. But if you're sitting all day, your muscles are just chilling. They're not demanding any fuel. It's like a factory that's shut down for the day. It doesn't need any more power deliveries. So that extra fuel, that glucose, has nowhere to go and just hangs around in your blood. But here's the awesome part. The moment you start moving, your muscles wake up and start screaming for that glucose. They pull it right out of your bloodstream to use as energy. And what's even cooler, regular activity basically acts like a can of WD-40 for those rusty cell locks, helping to make them way more sensitive and responsive to insulin again. Okay, so let's recap. We've got our three main culprits on the board: that active visceral fat, the silent fire of inflammation, and the stillness effect from being sedentary. But here's where it all comes together, because the most important thing to realize is they aren't working alone. They're a team. This is the big aha moment right here. That visceral fat actually pumps out signals that cause inflammation. Then the inflammation can make your body more likely to store more visceral fat. And of course, being sedentary makes both of those things worse. You see it? It's a self-reinforcing, vicious cycle where each problem just feeds right into the next, creating the absolute perfect storm for insulin resistance. So where does that leave us? What's the big takeaway? Well, it's pretty clear there's no single magic bullet here. The real goal is to build healthy habits over time that just interrupt that cycle. Things like a balanced diet may help you manage that visceral fat. Regular movement, as we saw, is fantastic for helping your muscles use glucose. And hey, even managing your stress is associated with lower inflammation. See, it really is all connected. So I want to leave you with a question to think about. Looking at this whole cycle, what is one small, tiny thing you could start doing today? Seriously, it doesn't have to be some huge life overhaul. Maybe it's just taking a 10-minute walk after a meal. Because breaking the cycle isn't about one giant leap. It's about taking that first small step.